Shalom, friends. Akiva here from Israel in 5, and I want to invite you personally to join me for a longer presentation taking place on Sunday, June 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time in honor of the upcoming holiday of Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. Go to israel5.org/tour to register for free or click on the link in the description. In this presentation, we are going to explore the biblical story behind the holiday of Shavuot, which celebrates the receiving of the Torah by the children of Israel on Mount Sinai. We'll also look at the modern-day cultural celebration of Shavuot in the modern-day Jewish state. And we'll also learn about the connection between this holiday and the 7 species through which the land of Israel is most known and blessed. It's going to be an exciting presentation. Definitely don't want to miss it. Please join me. Again, go to israel5.org/tour or click on the link in the description. Sunday, June 9th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Can't wait to see you there. All the best and be well. I want to tell you about the retirement home of the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion. It just might not be what you think it is. Shalom, my friends. This is the Akiva with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or want to keep the conversation going, please do so below in the comments. David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel. Many books have been written about him. There are many more books that could be written about him. An incredible, extraordinary human being who literally changed Jewish history. He was the one who stood up in May 1948 and declared the existence of the State of Israel, the first Jewish independent state in the Jewish homeland in over 2,000 years. He did so much from the days of his youth in Russia to the end of his life in the 1970s. He did so much for the Jewish people, so much for the Jewish cause, so much for Zionism, so much for Israel. The list is seemingly endless what he did. And after many years of serving as prime minister and making many very important and difficult decisions, right? There's one very popular saying of his that said, "Don't tell me what the people want, I'll tell you what they need." He was a very stubborn man, but always with the good of the Jewish people in mind and the state of Israel. And after many years of serving as Israel's first prime minister, not an easy job. Another little side story, he was visiting with the president of the US at the time of him serving as prime minister. And the president said to Ben-Gurion, he said, "Wow, you have such an easy job, just a few million people living in your country. I have hundreds of millions of people in my country." And Ben-Gurion said, "Yeah, you have a country of hundreds of millions of people with one leader. I have a country of millions of people who think they're the leader," which is very true about the Israeli people. Anyway, so after many years of serving as prime minister, he decided it was time for him to leave, make space for somebody else. He did a lot. It's time for him to go. Now, where is he going to retire to, right? He could have gone anywhere in Israel, any house, any ranch, any plot of land, any beautiful apartment in a high rise in Tel Aviv. Where does he go? He literally goes to a small farming community in the south of Israel called Sde Boker. Why does he go there? Well, some years before, he was coming back from Eilat on a state visit, and his driver was driving through the area, and the road was blocked, temporarily blocked, by a herd of sheep and some young Israeli kids in his eyes, in their 20s, farming the land in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. He got out of the car and he said, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And they explained to him, we've come to settle the desert. We've come to bring the vision of Zionism to the desert. And he told Ben-Gurion that they had a little community there, a little agricultural farming community called Sde Boker. Ben-Gurion was blown away, and he never forgot that place. And he said, "One day I want to return there." So when he retires, Ben-Gurion, the most famous person in Israel, where does he retire to? He literally goes to the kibbutz. And it's a kibbutz, a communal agricultural community called the kibbutz, right? And that's where he goes. That's where he retires. And the people are a little bit shocked. Like, what do we do with Ben-Gurion? First of all, he's like triple our age. And he's Ben-Gurion. He's one of the most famous people in all of Jewish history. And yet he wanted to be treated just like everyone else, which is the theory and the philosophy of a kibbutz, that equal work, equal treatment, equal everything, right? And he moved there and he got himself a little house like everybody else. And he signed up for work like everybody else. At first, they didn't want to give him any work because how can you give work to Ben-Gurion? What do you have him shoveling manure or attending to the animals? That's exactly what he wanted to do. In fact, the first day that he was there, he went to check the list of what he's supposed to do that day, and his name didn't appear. And he said to the work manager, "Put me on the list. I came here to work." Again, even though he was already advanced in his years. There's literally pictures of Ben-Gurion shoveling manure on this farm, on this kibbutz. That's what he wanted. For him, retirement was settling into that vision of Zionism, right? Continuing to help out the country just in a different way. Right? When he first came to the land of Israel in the early 1900s, he lived on a kibbutz. He lived on one of these communal settlements for a little while. And that was his heart, that was his soul, that was his dream. That's what he loved to do. And so it was perfect for him to end his life doing the same thing. Eventually, he was called back to the government. He went back to the government for a few years and then came back down to Sde Boker and lived there until the end of his life in 1973. You can actually go visit his home today. It's an amazing thing. His home is about double the normal size of a kibbutz home, but kibbutz homes are very, very small, so it's still not very large at all. It would definitely be considered small by anyone's standards. There's a tiny little kitchen, a little sitting area, and pretty much the biggest room in his house is his library, where he had a big desk packed with papers and books. And literally, they left it basically the way he left it, and wall-to-wall books. He was an avid reader, and he would correspond with people through letters, and he was always learning. Literally, he was the first defense minister of Israel, even though he never actually fought in a war. How did he learn? Literally from books. The guy was a genius, and when you go into his house, you really get a sense of who he was. Both this genius part of him, his passion, his love, but also his humility. Right? He lived in such a small house in the last years of his life when he could have lived in a huge mansion or ranch. And at his request, there were no words shared at his funeral. Right? He's buried actually just a few steps away from the house that he lived in on Sde Boker. Normally prime ministers are buried in Jerusalem on Har Herzl, Mount Herzl, which is the national cemetery of the nation of Israel. But he wanted to be buried in the desert, right, in Sde Boker. And you can visit his grave, and it's this beautiful kind of plaza area looking out to the desert, this gorgeous, gorgeous view. Because he loved the desert so much, that's where he wanted to be buried, right? And he knew that people would come visit his grave. So he knew that even in his death, he'd be able to bring people to the desert, because for him, the desert was like the next frontier of Zionism. If we could really take advantage of the desert and use what it has and do incredible things there, then we're expanding Zionism in great and wondrous ways. And that was really his vision in general, specifically in the last years of his life. And that's why David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, right, retired to a small little house on a small farming community in the desert.